Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. It was quite a busy weekend. There's loads and loads to go through. We're going to have to go through it quite quickly today. We got WEC from Croatia. We got BTCC. It's back from a very wet Donington. Formula E from Berlin, plus lots of other stuff. We're going to kick off with a little bit of news. Not that much going on, but we're all anticipating Formula One coming back. And there's a little bit of Formula One news. A big reshuffle, Tiff, within the Mercedes.
Yeah, Mercedes, they haven't changed the car. They haven't changed the car or changed the side pods. They've just changed the... who was it? They've changed the technical director with the
Allison and Mike Elliott. They swapped roles again, reshuffled them around. So I think that's pretty useless news. There is another little bit of Formula One news, another little bit of useless Formula One news, but Silverstone are modifying Turn 1. So remember that awful crash with Zhou, who somehow managed to walk away from it. They're modifying Turn 1 so that doesn't happen again, because it was all about the gravel flipping the car over. So they're just going to extend a bit of tarmac. But...
And then they'll say, well, it hit the barrier too hard because it didn't slow down on the tarmac. So we have to put a gravel trap in to slow. Oh, wow. I mean, gravel traps are driving me mad now with all these safety cars every 5 minutes. And Donington the weekend for every race was permanently being led by a pace car. Or a safety car, whatever. Anyway, that's an ongoing saga. Yuki Tsunoda, the only other news, wasn't Yuki happy or something? He's saying there's no negativity within the... I don't know, just some PR bull, basically.
I think they're just bored. AlphaTauri are just bored, and they wanted a bit.
Well, yeah, it's been a quiet month. Luckily, it's all coming back to action this coming weekend. We'll talk about that later. We're back to Baku and sprint races. So it was weird, wasn't it? Formula One. We got all excited for 3 races. It's back. It's exciting. And then we had this sudden lull.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got like loads of motorsport to talk about. GT, Superbikes, Super Formulas, so much going on last weekend. And of course, the big event was the World Rally Championship, held under this awful cloud, after the loss of Craig Breen. And it must have been so hard for all those teams to gather themselves up and be enthusiastic. And, Hyundai, they repainted their cars, a lot of green on it in Craig's memory, and everybody was obviously still shattered, and that they had to get on with the job of doing a rally. Hyundai didn't run a third car with Craig not being there, so they didn't replace Craig's cars. They only ran 2 cars. In fact, we were down to only 8 cars in the sort of in the top class, with the 2 Hyundais, 2 Fords, and then 4 Toyotas. But no way, it was Sebastian Ogier was back for continuing his part-time season whilst he leads the championship. But then even the Toyota rally fell apart on the second stage. And the 2 quickest choices, Sebastian Ogier and Kalle Rovanperä, they both, it was just an innocuous-looking cut, and there was a little pothole. It was a very fast corner, and they were only about 6 inches off the tarmac, cutting the corner. And both Toyotas hit the same... pothole, and both had punctures. So that finished Ogier and Rovanperä's weekend. So that was sort of 2 cars out of contention.
Don't they learn from each other, or just because they're in the same team, they don't actually help each other?
They can't tell the other guy. You can't quickly radio back or anyone. When you're on this, I think you can tell them to watch the pothole. I don't know who was first into the stage. Well, Sebastian would have hit it first.
Don't get me started on potholes, by the way. Anyone that lives in the UK. Oh, goodness.
I won't. No, I won't. But then Ogier's weekend went from bad to worse, and we're going to talk about rule makers when it comes to touring cars. Rule makers again came out with this. It's just, there's so many rules. We talked about this in Formula One, haven't we? And it's a sort of written regulation, because Ogier's co-driver apparently didn't get his stupid hands device on properly after they changed the tyre. So they've finished the stage, they've lost a minute and a half, because that's, so they're pretty much out of the rally anyway. But some old sharp-eyed steward noticed that apparently Ogier started going, and they got all the data for 16 seconds. The car drove slowly while Ogier clicked his belts in, and then for another 28 seconds he went a bit quicker. And apparently the co-driver, I think he got the belt under the hands device, which has happened to me at a driver change. And it's a pain in the bloody heart. It doesn't work. But, he had all the belts in. He was fiddling. I think somebody kept on fiddling with it while he finished the stage at high speed because the hands wasn't correctly mounted. And they gave him a minute's penalty. And I mean, I'm probably there is a rule there.
It's harsh, but I think look, safety. You've got to do it, and it's the worst thing. Driver changes are the worst thing. You've got to be quick, and it's so frustrating.
Well,
it doesn't go right, but you've got to do it. I'm with the safety boys on that. I'm sorry, mate.
Had their belts
a minute is harsh. Yeah, maybe 30 seconds or something, but a minute.
Apparently, the OJ kept asking his co-driver, "Have you got your belts on?"
Yeah,
and apparently he said yes, which he did technically because they're all plugged in. But he just didn't have them on correctly. So anyway, so that was stage 2 of the whole. It's on Friday. Two of the Toyotas were out of contention. So it was Thierry Neuville took over the head of the field in his Hyundai, and then on the day 2, Saturday, went a bit wide, took the rear corner off against a tree. So that was the leading Hyundai out with Esapekalapi struggling. They're all struggling. They all had a bad sort of Saturday. They're all moaning about handling and grip. The circuit was tricky. So that promoted Elfyn to the lead, which he then held to the finish. He was chased hard by Ott Tanak in the Ford, and Tanak had it down to about 12 seconds on Saturday afternoon, but then he had mechanical problems, so he was handicapped. So really, Elfyn was given a rally win almost on a plate, and it was probably right.
Long deserved, to be honest with you. He's been close so many times.
No wins last season, so he's been put in his place a bit by this kid Rovanperä, and of course Ogier coming back. So Ogier did twice. Poor old Elfyn lost the world title because Ogier just pipped him, and then now he thought he'd be free when Ogier was gone, and then Rovanperä beats him, and now Ogier's back again. But it was quite nice that a driver from the British Isles, which Ireland still is. I know Craig's Irish, was Irish, he's Irish. For him to win the rally, and he had the Irish flag up, and I'm sure everybody. It wasn't a win to celebrate. That was the shame, really, for Elfyn. It wasn't a day to celebrate rallying.
No, of course not. Of course it wasn't. But when these drivers are doing well, of course they're British. But when they're not doing well,
from the British Isles, she's correct.
Yeah. No,
Craig's definitely not British. Don't say that. He's definitely wasn't
I know.
But it is the British Isles. They are officially. I think Ireland. I think in Ireland, I actually looked this up before I said this today. But I think in 2002, the Irish Parliament has actually had a creed saying we are not the British Isles. But I think geographically they still are. But I'm sure that's nobody is going to worry because we all love Craig, whatever his nationality.
But isn't it fitting that Elfyn won? I don't know.
I think so. Well, I think it was good that, as I've just said, that a driver from the British Isles won the event. Toyota now lead the championship, top 3. And the 3 drivers are all separate by 1 point. Ogier on 69. Rovanperä is now on 69, if I got that right. Well, no, Elfyn's on 69, but he's only won 1 rally to Ogier's 2.
Well, he's consistent.
And then Rovanperä is on 68.
Yeah.
So literally the 3 Toyotas are dominating again, and I think they're going to have another good year. As the Hyundai still seem to have mechanical problems and driver problems. And WRC2, quick mention, Gus Greensmith, who dominated the opening rounds. He was on the pace, but he had punctures and troubles and finished 7th. So not a good weekend for Gus. So a sad weekend, but a good weekend for Elfyn. And we all move onwards and onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go
memories from Craig that will last forever.
Yeah.
So British touring cars. Instead of going international, I think the best weekend of entertainment anywhere in the world this weekend was at Donington for the British touring cars.
A very wet Donington.
They didn't disappoint, did they? And it was just fabulous. And those conditions, a front wheel drive on slicks in the second, in the rain. I mean, I don't know how any of them got around the first corner. But it was really good racing, and it opened with this controversial clash with Ash Sutton, second on the grid.
Who's just had a baby as well, by the way.
Yeah. Dan Rowbottom on pole, the 2 Napa boys. Ash had lost one of his lap times in qualifying for track limits. But on the inside, lurking on the inside of the road, 3rd row, was Jake Hill in his BMW. One of the favourites, I think, to win the championship this year. And did you see this incident or not? Have you seen it or not?
I did, yeah.
So, I mean, Jake makes the good start with the rear-wheel drive. Ash made a good start on the left with his front-wheel drive, and Rowbottom made a terrible start. So, Jake was quickly alongside Rowbottom. There was a bit of door banging there as Rowbottom and him sort of rubbed shoulders. There's Ash, who's sunning his sides. Ash will now travel at 45 degrees across the circuit. He's got in a perfect straight line. He's leading, so he probably almost can't see anybody in his peripheral vision.
Peripheral
So I
vision.
think his head is now ahead of the other two cars. So and he can't see any cars in his wing mirrors apart from the car behind him on the grid. And he just decides to go. Now, again, this is what I said at the beginning. There is obviously now a rule written about overtaking and who's got the right of way. Now, we don't know what the steward said, because I and Tim Harvey on the television were all saying on Twitter, well, Ash, what an idiot. He's gone across and he's taken himself out because he turned around the front of Brundle's front left corner. But they've obviously tried to write a rule as goes on and on and on. There was a clash in Alton Park when someone moved over and they said, well, I know the rule that if there's any overlap, you have to give way to the car in front. There's a certain position where the stewards have decided you've got to be somewhere to have any right of way. But I can only imagine that the rule now written is that if you've only got 2 feet of overlap, you have to give way.
Yep.
But no, this is racing.
It's a really funny one. My first season of racing, I every single time went down the inside, even though I was there and I had the move done. As soon as someone started to turn in on me, I always gave way. I was always thinking, I'm not going to go for that. And then my second season, I did the opposite, and I did much better in terms of results. So it is racing, isn't it? Surely.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to bully someone off the circuit. No. You're using your car in a Verstappen-y manner. No. In fact, someone on Twitter said that Ash is the Verstappen of touring cars. But he's literally saying, you've all got to get out of my way because I'm 3/4 of a car length in front, or is it 7/8, or is it 14/16, or is it, what is the overlap? And they're saying that, that he should have backed out of it, Jake. Seeing a car coming across in front of you, you should back out.
But if you're there, and you've got the position, if you're making the move, then why
he couldn't move to the right.
Yeah,
he could have hit the brakes, but then it might have caused someone hit him from behind. You don't hit the brakes. Someone starts hitting the brakes in the middle of the grid. So there is a rule. Obviously, they've written a rule,
but there's got
to stick by.
The rules are ridiculous because they're too black and white.
They're too contrived and too.
But there's got to be. It's so competitive. Any form of racing is competitive, but there's got to be some sort of gentleman's etiquette or ladies' etiquette or whatever etiquette to give way for your, because you don't want to crash.
I think, to be honest, I tell you what they need. These children, these touring car children, karting. They introduced that many years ago. The 2 lanes, they put cones, don't they? They've got traffic cones down the middle.
You're right.
To stop the karters moving before they've crossed. Maybe that's what the touring car children need. The move by Ash, it was so aggressive. I would have thought Jake hardly had time to think, what's he doing? What's he doing? Oh, blooming hell, he's hit me. Oh, blooming hell, It was just...
Yeah, wasn't a slight turn.
No. It was just
Yeah, too much.
They all do it in Formula One as well. You look at the Silverstone crash. We mentioned the Silverstone. That was, again, too much manoeuvring when you're just coming off the grid. People just move and expect others to get out of their way now, which I don't think they should. When you look back at the 60s, I'm not dinosaur, but they used to have 4 cars on the front row. They used to have 4 on the front row, 3 on the second row for a Silverstone for a Grand Prix. They all stayed in a straight line until they got much nearer the first corner.
There's so much weaving now. And you have a staller or someone gets off the line badly.
Anyway.
Or you get off the line well.
Anyway, so over the controversy, it was still Rowbottom, who made the bad start, and it was the other Dan, wasn't it? Dan Cammish came through in the other Napa car to take the lead and pull out and win the first race in great style. But there was this battle going on behind. Ash obviously damaged the car a lot, and that was he was in the pits and didn't reappear till the second race, pretty much. But there's brilliant racing going on behind. What was it? It was Tom Ingram was with who was he holding off? It was Tom Ingram and Jake Hill, because Cammish eventually got past Hill to take the lead because the BMW is not good in the wet. Jake was really struggling to hold on to the lead, which he did brilliantly as the wet tyres were wearing out. And then the lovely thing about touring cars, all of a sudden out of the blue, there's some bloke called Andrew Watson. I'm trying to go through all my Wikipedia to find out who's Andrew Watson, and he was catching the Ingram Hill battle in his Vauxhall Astra, not a popular car. It's one of the ones with the Toka engine, where most of the top runners all run now on their own manufacturer-made engines. He was actually a very successful Ginetta racer. In fact, Tom Ingram later on said that he raced against him in Ginetta G55s. He knows what a good competitor is. And he'd done quite well in GT racing. He never raced a front-wheel drive car. He's this bespectable Northern Ireland that looks least like a racing driver. And there he was, fantastic. And I love stories like that come out of BTC. Someone, and he probably could have got third place, but he caught the pack.
Yeah, he was close.
So great stuff. Then, of course, we had the second race with all this drama of going out in the rain. It started raining pretty much on the green flag lap and really started coming down. And I was saying, flipping hell, they'll all be in the pits for tyres.
But they did the end of the green flag. Yeah.
Only Chilton and who was ahead of him on the grid?
Don't know.
Look at Adam Morgan. Adam Morgan with the BMW. I think he was the furthest up the grid to peel in, and Chilton peeled in. And I was amazed because Ash Sutton had to start at the back because he retired from the first race.
He had nothing to lose.
I couldn't believe it. He had nothing to lose. I just could not believe it. That, Chilton had said as soon as he saw the slicks making tracks as they weaved in the rain, he's a very experienced driver, Tom. He's won in all sorts of formula. A lovely guy too. And he just seems obvious, he said. And I would have thought, I can't believe that Ash didn't do the same thing. He had nothing to lose, but no, he stayed on slicks. So most of them stayed on slicks. Most of them stayed on the road, incredibly. I couldn't believe it till they all.
But if your pit is saying to you, it's only there might be a shower when you start, but then it's going to brighten up. You psychologically, you think, oh, okay, it's only going to be a shower. It's only.
They've got windscreens, haven't they? They can look out. They can look up. They've probably got so much advertising and the sun visors they can't see the sky to see the black clouds coming. So we had a great move by Chilton race with people. Sort of Adam Morgan was the leading wet weather tyre for a while, and Chilton overtook Morgan as if he was standing still. Again, BMW not that good in the rain, and I think Adam said he was being a bit too careful, but Tom didn't care. He stormed to the front, pulled out a massive lead, and went on to win. Adam Morgan came through second in his BMW, and then again we had a lovely story because we had Ronan Pearson, this Scottish guy. In a Hyundai, same as Tom Chilton. He was 24th on the grid where he qualified. And he came through to third, tears in his eyes, but got disqualified for ride height. Okay, you have to agree. Okay, I agree that. But I don't know how big the ride height thing was. But also going on, because while Pearson was running third, Nick Hamilton emerged from 21st on the grid. He actually pitted before the green flag lap. Nick did the out lap onto the grid and came in before he did the green flag lap. And he was running he got pushed down to sixth at the end, but it was, I think his brother was there. I think his dad was certainly there. I think Lewis might have been there as well. I'm not sure. So wonderful stories again, because Nick, of course, he's got this problem with his physicality, but it was just brilliant. I mean, under pressure because he had, front drivers coming up behind him, to try and push past. So that was a wonderful story. And then we've had the final race, the reverse grid.
Yep.
Poor old Tom Chilton shot himself in the foot by picking ball number 12, which put him on 12th on the grid. And it put Dan Cammish on pole position. So he was the leading one of the sort of recovering front runners. And Dan Rowbottom.
He led from the front, didn't he, start to finish?
Yeah, well, that was probably going to happen. And Dan Rowbottom, there was back on the front row of the grid again and had another awful start and had another awful race. So Rowbottom had a really bad weekend, really, having got pole for the beginning of the weekend. But again, we had this amazing battle. I mean, Cammish was always about 2 seconds up the front. But who was it? It was Ingram, Sutton, Hill and Turkington. Just four of them. And they were just so close for lap after lap. The bumpers are on the bumpers, but not touching the button. Well, they did in the end. I think Ash Sutton gave Turkington a bit of a shove in the end to get past. But hopefully, I presume Ash was enough alongside, was he, to hit Turkington? You see, how far alongside was he?
He's a father now. He should be chilled out. He should be a lot more relaxed.
So it was just great racing. And of course, they have they have the Formula 4 racing. There's now 2 Porsche categories to entertain the crowds.
Shame about the bloody weather.
No Ginettas.
So shame about the bloody weather, though, Tiff. Yeah, no Ginettas as well. But it's good, Donington. It's a good place to watch as well because you can see a lot from one place.
It looked like a big crowd. So
yeah, it was great.
The show is back, despite losing some teams for financial reasons. The show is back on the road. No Jason, of course. Mr. Plato not there. But yeah. So I'm sure everybody was very entertained, if slightly wet, but they went left. There was an awful crash in the Minis. I haven't heard a full update on how the guy was. He looked like a brake failure going to Redgate. and just overtook it on the grass, as one would do, and clipped another car, hit it very hard. And when he stopped in the gravel trap, you could actually see he was unconscious. His head was down in the car, which was a bit scary. But at the end of the interviews, they were saying that they're all okay.
Which is why you should have your hands device connected properly, because if it's like that, then the hand's going to save it. Safety, Tiff.
I don't wear a hands device if I don't have to. It should be left to the individual.
Did you wear one in the Cortina?
No.
Okay.
Because if it's pre-67 car, you don't have to wear one.
And is there any headrest on the Cortina?
I didn't look. Possibly.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? You can race a car like that and no hands and potentially no headrest. Of that era, a lot of the cars didn't have one. I mean, that was fast racing. Anyway,
I go mad. I go mad with these things you're forced to have. You're not forced to have a balaclava that covers your mouth. Like balaclavas were invented to stop you inhaling fumes and flames, and now they seem to allow them to wear them. In fact, the FIA designed shape is to go round the thing. You're allowed to wear an open face helmet with nothing covering your face. You've got to buy hands devices, fireproof overalls, boots, things, millions of pounds, and yet you don't have to anymore cover your face.
Well, I like it. Any opportunity to cover my face is a good one. Face for radio.
So let's move to Berlin.
What do you think of the Formula
centre of Berlin? Well, it's not the city centre, obviously. It's not city centre racing. It's the old airfield as usual. It's a good track. It's wide. It's produced some good racing in the past, but
you didn't like it, did you?
Now I don't know whether it's this new Gen 3. They've got more power, so maybe they have to do more energy saving, because it's an energy saving race. They admit, Formula E publicised it's an energy saving competition, but it's now got farcical. I mean, I've used the word strongly because they are going in a pack. Nobody wants to lead. They're all trying to save as much energy as they can for the first 35 out of 40 laps. They are using, this is the funniest bit, they're going into the attack mode, so you get to the front of everyone, and then to move back in the pack, not to overtake or attack, because you have to go in there twice per race. They're going into the attack mode in order to drop back to fourth or fifth and then cruise around, saving weight, and then get into the attack mode again. So literally this ridiculous looking, and of course, the statistics, more race leaders than ever than any other race series, because nobody wants to flipping well lead. Oh, anyway, however, there is normally a good race for 5 laps. Once they've all done 35 laps saving, now you'll work out who's managed to save the most, and then you all have a bit of a go. And it was on Saturday, it was quite a good race, because Mitch Evans came through it was a 1-2 with Sam Bird was second. Took the lead off Sebastian Buemi in the Envision. All Jaguar power plants. Again, like in Formula 1, you've got to have a Red Bull. In Formula E, it appears you have to have a Jaguar drivetrain that does the best, most efficient racing. But no, both the two Jaguars got ahead of the Envision, which is Jaguar-powered Buemi. It's a bit of good proper dicing. And in fact, the Maserati of, who was it, who took the place? Max Gunther, took third place off of Buemi, I think the last corner, last lap. So it was a bit of racing that made the Saturday race a race. But the only excitement on Sunday was the flipping climate idiots invading the start line. Who thought that invading a Formula E race, which is supposed to be, according
exactly, it was the most ironic protest ever. I mean, did they understand that they were electric cars? Did they understand that this formula is trying to change people's?
I'm not sure these protesters understand anything. They just have this
racing,
this self-belief. And the frightening thing was, I mean, that they just, I mean, how this is all sport, the Grand National. What we're going to do with our sporting venues? Because these protesters, they just climbed up the safety debris fence in front of the grandstand, in front of the grid. They didn't sneak in round the back or anything. They just
check everybody to see if you've got an orange T-shirt on or something. Look at snooker in the UK last week, this week.
But that's what I mean. Yeah, so we've had Grand National, we had the snooker, we had Formula E, and I think there's something the papers at Silverstone are worried. I mean, how can you? What can you do with these people? Unless we lock them all up for a bit longer, therefore they're less free to go and do these interruptions. It's a big problem for the future.
They were anticipating one yesterday. I can't remember where it was, but it didn't happen, which is good.
Yeah, during the marathon, London Marathon.
Oh, yes, I think
the rain might have put them off protesting. Anyway, so that was the most excitement of race 2 was the climate protester. And then we had this ridiculous pack of cars going round after you. And then once they did release at the end, nobody overtook anybody for the last 5 or 6. Nick Cassidy cruised to win with Envision, Jaguar powertrain. Jake Dennis with the Porsche powertrain, which dominated the early season, the first 3 or 4 races, all run by Porsche powertrains. And Jake, I think he just wanted to finish. After a great start to the season, he's had crashes, mechanical problems, all sorts. And in fact, he had a crash in the first race, another Formula E problem, this braking ratio. Because they've got no rear brakes. So the computer decides how much deceleration you get from the regen going on. But once you commit, because you lift, I don't know, say 100 yards before the corner, then you only brake 25 yards before the corner. So if your braking gets a bit wrong in those last 25, you just hit someone in front of you because you can't slow it down anymore,
But it is when you take your foot off, it is lifting, it's regenerative. So it is the braking, but it's just not the full-on brake. So
so you have to add a...
Yeah.
So Jake took out, I don't know who clattered into, Antonio Felix da Costa got clattered into. There was another, Dan Tickton was in the news. Dan's getting a bit feisty. He actually led for a while. He always gives his everything, but he squeezed Van Dorm into the wall, which looked a bit naughty to me because they were side by side.
We got nowhere to go.
Well, no, they were side by side, and Dan miscalculated the width of a Formula E car between him and the wall.
Yeah.
Because anyway, they both took all their wheels off, and that was the end. But so yes, I don't know Formula E. I mean,
who are we going to be supporting at the end of May, though? Who are we going to be supporting in Monte Carlo? Who are we going to be supporting then?
Well, Maserati, obviously.
No, just because you got a Maserati from the Hendy Group, I just thought I'd put that little plug in for you. No, Cupra, because I'm going to check it out firsthand with Cupra, right. Monte Carlo.
Good. Well, I want you to come back with some incisive questions on these very things, right? The trouble is, if they go to bigger circuits, which people like Monaco actually has produced some good racing in the Gen 2 cars. But now on these open circuits where this power saving seems to be more critical, will Monaco now be an after you? Will that, so you've got to ask incisive, what are they going to do about this? What when the attack mode
Who am I going to ask that to? The teams aren't going to tell you.
Well, you're going to have to be a controversial journalists. Because when the attack mode becomes a drop back in the pack mode, I mean, you can't have an attack. You can't use the word attack mode when nobody uses it for attacking. They use it because they have to go through it twice in a race.
I will ask that question for you.
Okay. The braking systems. Are you not worried about your braking systems? I want a full investigative report coming back from that.
Done. Consider it done.
Anyway, those are the 3 big events. We've got loads of other events we quickly go through that were filling my screens and televisions and computers. I had to go online to watch the World Fanatec GT3 Championship from Monza. I mean, 55 cars from Audi, Ferrari, Mercedes, Lamborghini, Porsche, BMW, McLaren, Aston Martin. I mean, just a brilliant grid. The only thought was that when I watched it was only on Tinternet with John Watson commentating. I love John's comments. He's always got a bit of a chuckle and a smile, and great to hear him commentating. And I thought, well, 55, they're never going to get through the first chicane at Monza. They almost all did, apart from 2 at the back. A 49-year-old amateur German, Florian Scholz, managed to clobber poor old, Samantha Tan, this Canadian sort of Ferrari. She's quite an entrepreneur. I think she brings the money to the team. And anyway, Florian's Mercedes smashed into put the Ferrari into the fence. And so just 2 cars went out. In fact, there were very few retirements. You can't believe it.
How long was the race?
BMW, I think it was 3 hours. I'm not sure. It was a 3-hour distance race. 3 drivers and all. But it was a BMW.
Always 3 drivers, or sometimes 2?
Yeah, I think you have to have 3 now because it's all this pro-am and silver, and gold. Absolutely, 4 classes. So you have that combination of different drivers. And it was a BMW 1-2 came out on top.
They look good though, don't they? They really look good when they.
Yeah. A British driver in each car. Brits earning money. I always try to highlight Brits out there doing. Nick Yellerly who came second in the IMSA race at Long Beach the weekend before for BMW. So he's having a wonderful career. So you don't have to be in Formula One, young drivers, to have a great career.
What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, let me choose a bizarre race that you have to look on the internet to earn my career, or let's go in Formula One. What are you talking about? Of course,
I'm just saying there aren't enough opportunities for Formula One, but there is plenty of opportunities to be a professional racing driver, as I was, enjoying cruising around the world. But of course, the best result was the fact that Barwell Motorsport, managed by Chris Needell, brother of Tiff, won the Pro-Am class in their Lamborghini. And they took the lead 12 minutes before the end of the race with their professional Dane, the Danish driver, Dennis Lind, was their fastest. Rob Collard, the touring car star, also the team, and Adam Ballon. So it's a good win for Barwell Motorsport. But a great spectacle. I mean, just so much racing going on non-stop. It's just a wonderful spectacle.
Let's have a quick look at Superbikes from Holland. Always exciting.
Now, I want someone from Bikes. We need more comments. I think our comment button's not working. I want you to investigate this, because with that BTCC controversy, I want this button pressed with some comments.
Do you know, when you, like I said last week, you go to Goodwood and you go to random places like Bristol Audi, and people say, "Oh, I love your podcast," and the amount of people say, "I listen to your podcast on the way to work because it gives me all my motorsport."
Well, your bean counter's not working then. Your bean counter's
we're
not
getting
working.
like 1,000 views or something. So yeah.
Anyway, so bikers, I want comments from bikers. Why is it that only Alvaro Bautista can ride a Ducati, Toprak Razgatiogo can ride a Yamaha, and Jonathan Rea can ride a Kawasaki? Because those three just keep on dominating the Superbikes. And there's something, we had Bradley Ray, our British champion from last year, in a Yamaha. We've got Alex Lowe's in the Kawasaki. We've got Scott Reddy in BMW. Tom Sykes, isn't it, in the Kawasaki? Lots of talented riders.
Yeah.
And yet, why are these three got in a class of their own? Anyway, Bautista dominated the weekend, won all three races. Jonathan Rea had 2 second places, then dropped it into the Catty Litter in the third race. And Toprak had 2 thirds and a second. So they just dominated the podium. It's quite bizarre. I've never known a formula that's a free formula, as it were, to be dominated by the same three riders.
Really? Is that unusual? Is it?
Yes, for something like that. So come on, bikers. I want to know, what is the answer? Why are those three in a formula of their own? Do a Superbike, Superformula Japan. I said we'd keep in touch with Liam Lawson, Red Bull's next Grand Prix driver, who's over in Japan doing his bit. Get a 4th place at Suzuka. And of course, the only other thing left was to fall asleep last night watching Talladega, baby. After a long day of watching, I think it wasn't the best Talladega. And the trouble is, people watch NASCAR, as you have sometimes, and some races are bad and some are good. And the Talladega is like data. It's this full throttle. Everyone's on full throttle all the time. And they're just playing this sort of 2 mile an hour quicker than the lane next door shuffle. And it does need a crash or two mid-race to waken you all up again. But the crashes didn't come until right at the end. So it was the usual. It's an amazing spectacle. I think what you don't understand if you're watching it on telly and you think, well, this is boring, that if you're there, the sight and sound of those 40 cars at 200 miles an hour, just...
I agree with you. It's incredible. The first sort of time you see it and hear it, it's like, that is just unbelievable. But then after 5 minutes, like, oh, it's a bit noisy. This is a bit boring.
Yeah, but you've then got your radio transmitter receiver, where you can listen in to any one of the 40 drivers. So you scan around, you're scanning, and you listen to the team tactics going on.
There's spotters as well.
Hearing the spotters, talking to the drivers talking. So that keeps you entertained if you're there and if you've got scanners. So it's, and of course you follow a certain driver, and that helps you and your driver can drop to a lap behind in 40th place and still come through to win. So you're never out of it until it all kicks off towards the end. I mean, obviously, they go but they have to have this contrast of races. They go to road courses, they go to these speedways, which is this full throttle.
And even proper circuits as well, like racetracks, which is
So they've got this huge variety of half a mile last weekend, half a mile around a concrete oval, and half a mile on dirt the weekend before, to 2 miles and 200 miles an hour. So that's a variety. So yes, some races look a bit different to others. Anyway, obviously we were all following the number 5, the Kyle Larson. who was in the mix. He was running about fourth or fifth, but then he was pushing. They all start pushing more and more towards the end, because they push you forwards.
Yeah.
And he was pushing Ross Chastain, but then Ross had a bit of a clash with Ryan Preece. They all get a bit of wiggle on, and hell broke loose. Kyle was spun down, but then we had this horrendous. He spun down to the apron, but then it twisted at 90 degrees and came up the hill again. And who was it? Was who did he come into? I forget the driver now. Sure, I've written it down somewhere. Was it Ryan Preece? Yes, Preece then came in, and just T-boned him flat out. I mean, Preece was doing 200 miles an hour. They backed off a bit because it was all kicking off, but I think Preece had actually thought he was clear and was going to get back on the throttle again. And Larson just came up and he just T-boned. They had an onboard camera of Preece hitting the car. And he's all calm with his visor down. You know, there's this blooming explosion. His head, the visor opens up, and you can see his eyes. He's almost half knocked out, you know, with the impact. It was a horrendous shunt that they now get out of. So that was the first big crash, which took Larson out. And then the last rush to the finish, we had Ryan Blaney pushing Bubba Wallace. Bubba was out front. And the trouble is, you know, as the commentators say, at the end, you just have to do what you got to do. And Bubba was just blocking left and right, and Blaney was trying to get past him, and he was pushing him, and then trying to get up, and then anyway, eventually Blaney turned Bubba around at 200 miles an hour, and that put him out.
But what Blaney said, he said Bubba, he didn't call it weaving, he called him blocking. He said he's in the centre blocking, then left blocking, then right blocking.
Well, you're allowed,
which we call weaving, and he just said it's one of those things. But whose fault was that?
Nobody's fault. Bubba did. They always say, I did what I had to do. And Blaney was saying, I mean, it was Bubba's fault for really over blocking, but he's trying to win the race, boy. So cruising through was the other car, Kyle Busch, who's now after so many years in his Toyota, in his Ford, happily took the win. He was running about fourth or fifth. So Kyle won. They were running out of fuel as well because they'd had a long time since the previous yellow. So it was a spectacle at the end, the usual Talladega end, but it needed a middle. It needed something exciting in the middle to wake us all up. What else was going on? God, flip it. I think that was about it for the weekend, wasn't it? Now we've got this weekend coming. We've got more than ever before.
Yeah, there's lots going on.
So it's going to be a very hectic weekend. We've got Formula One's obviously back, Azerbaijan, with the first sprint race of the year. And I think it's official, isn't it? They're not going to change the grid for the Grand Prix. So I think on Friday we've got FP1, and then we got Sunday qualifying, and then I think Saturday morning instead of FP3 we've got sprint qualifying.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah. So the sprint race on Saturday won't change the grid. Right, I think that's all been agreed. It was all been discussed, but I haven't actually seen it's finally agreed. But I'm pretty sure it is now. That's what's going to happen. So it means that the sprint race, they can have a bit of a go. And apart from damaging their cars, it won't change their grid positions.
Okay, good stuff.
So then we got Indy and the Indy NXT, obviously with Jamie Chadwick. See how well she can get on. Chadwick on a road course, Birmingham road course.
In terms of Jamie, sort of towards the back so far. There's only been one race in St. Petersburg, but
it was a pretty hard baptism of fire at St. Pete because it was a pretty tricky street track. And we got World Endurance Championship Spa, fantastic. Ferraris, can they finally beat Toyota? Will Toyota continue to dominate? So that should be great to watch. MotoGP in Spain, gosh, what are you going to watch? It's just MotoGP, always entertaining. We've got British Superbikes at Alton Park if you want to watch some live motorsport in England. We've got the Aussie Supercars, which we're going to keep in touch with because that's all quite exciting, the Fords versus the Chevrolets. And over in the Red Bull Ring, in Spielberg, we have got the first weekend of the Formula One Academy, where Abby Pulling is one of the favourites to win. So I'm not sure how you can watch that or see it because I can't be bothered to find out, but I'm sure can you please tweet to me where we can watch the Formula One Academy, first round, the 15 young ladies, hopefully on the path to Formula One.
Now get amongst it in the comments. Please get amongst it in the comments. Just say anything, whatever your favourite motorsport is, or what are your best memory of Tiff, or anything.
Was Ash Sutton right or wrong? Come on, Ash. There's loads of Ash Sutton fans out there. I think Ash was wrong.
We'll put that on as our main comment. Maybe we need to start with a comment like most of these YouTubers do, and let it flow from there. But thanks for joining us.
BTC controversy. We get some Sun titles up.
We'll see you next week. Well, that's called clickbait, Tiff. We'll see you next week for another action-packed podcast. Thanks for joining.
Cheers.
Cheers.